everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. Today I have my December wrap up. I read so many books in December. I really just went so hard. I read 15 books, which is the most that I read in a month in 2021. I listened to a lot of audiobooks, but I also read a physical book. Let's hear it from me. I don't read a lot of physical, like actual in paper books. I read a lot of ebooks and I read a lot of audiobooks. And lucky for you all, I've actually vlogged most of these between the historical romance readathon and this like Christmas holiday vlog that I did. So when I get to those, I won't go into super detail just because they have whole videos dedicated to them. I didn't put these in like a ranking order. I'm just gonna go through these in the order that I read them in December. The first book I read in December was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This is a thriller. The cover is beautiful. It's an isolated setting. This couple who's been together for a while, their marriage is kind of rocky. They aren't really like meshing with each other anymore. They go on this vacation retreat type thing that the wife won at work, and they're in this really creepy chapel and it's super snowy, like they should not have been traveling, and they have such a tense relationship, but they're trying to rekindle their marriage, and then it gets really twisty turny from there. I gave this book 3 stars. It was fun and I loved the setting and the atmosphere, but this used a plot device that I just don't like, where our husband in this story has this condition, they call it facial blindness, where he literally can't see anyone's face. And I just have found that I don't really like that used in books. It's just so convenient. It kind of makes me like roll my eyes like, oh no, well too bad he can't identify anyone ever, not even his wife. But the twist, didn't see it coming. I did appreciate that, but I have just learned that that's not my favorite thing in a thriller. And then a surprise, I read In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle, and I have never heard, I won't say I've never heard, I have not heard many people say good things about this book. I gave this book 4 stars. Now, I don't think it's a romance. It is not a romance. It's marketed as a romance. This is just like sad women's fiction. That's what I'll call it. So the premise of this, we have 2 girls who are best friends, and the main girl that we're reading from is in this super like stable, very tame relationship, like a long-term relationship with this guy. Well, she has this dream about this other man. Like she literally has a vision into something that happens in the future, which I didn't care for that. Like that just felt really weird in this otherwise very serious book. But she has this super passionate vision of this different man, so it kind of makes her hesitate a lot in her current relationship. And then there's some heartache and illness and death, and we go from there. So this was really just like a sad time and people like experiencing tragedy and illness together, and I loved the ending of it. I will just say that I enjoyed it for what it was, but this was not a romance. And then I read If the Duke Demands by Anna Harrington, and I feel really hurt by this book. I gave it 4 stars. I absolutely loved everything about the first 60% of this book. So the setup of this, it's a historical romance. Our female main character, she's not titled. She was orphaned when she was maybe 10 or so, and she's been living with her aunt and uncle, and they are, I guess they're like tenants of this Duke family. So she has always known all the children in this family, and she is trying to set herself up with one of the younger sons. And they're at like this masked ball, a masquerade, I guess you call those things. And she accidentally kisses the Duke, the oldest brother. And then they figure out what's going on, and then she agrees to help him find a wife, and he agrees to help set her up with his younger brother. But obviously, they're the 2 who are gonna have a relationship together. And I just thought this book was so much fun. I loved our female character so much. She works at the orphanage that is like sponsored by this Duke and his family, and she just does such amazing work with the children. And she's just so vibrant and wants to live life, and she likes to read, and she was just so much fun. And then this Duke, he cannot help himself. He's like, whoa, Miranda sure grew up, didn't she? Because he's been like gone doing, I don't know, oldest son things. So he doesn't know her as well as his younger siblings do, but he just can't resist her. And I ate this up until, so they start a relationship together. And he just keeps telling himself and her, I can't marry you. I have to marry a lady of high social standing because I'm the Duke. And what I really did not like is that he basically had to get the okay from his mom to be with her. And I really think he needed to grovel a lot more. Like, he is not the best to her in the like 70% area of this book, and I think he needed to do a lot more to make up for how he treated her. But other than that, like, this book was just so amazingly good. And then I read Mine Till Midnight by Lisa Kleypas. This is in my historical romance readathon vlog, which I'll have linked below, and I just love to show off the step back in these books. But this book was not my most favorite. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. This is the first book in her Hathaway series. So we meet the Hathaway family, and there's like 3 or 4 daughters and a son who is the Duke, and he's a mess. He got on my nerves a lot. He has lost a loved one in his past, and since then he has just like been on a huge binge. Drugs, alcohol, anything they had available in the 1800s, he does. He's just a piece of trash. And the oldest sister is basically the new matriarch of this family. She's just trying to hold everyone together so they have a place to live, because if he dies, then they lose everything. Because he's not married, they lose their standing, their dukedom, all that. So she's trying to keep it all together, and her love interest is this Romani guy, and he's just really good at business. Like, he doesn't want to be really good at business, but he just keeps making all this money. But he would rather like live in like an easy, nomadic, just like chill life, and he's too valuable to everyone around him. He's just too valuable. And this is their relationship. But it's mainly the Hathaway family being really too much. This was a really fun time though, like a lot happens in this. I got a little bit confused about the different families that they like visit in here, but the setup for the romance that is the second book in here was so good. It's with one of the other Hathaway daughters, and they're basically like this guy who they pretty much adopted as an orphan, and he's just been like the muscle of their family since they were all kids, and it's their relationship. I don't know if any of that makes sense. When I start talking about this and just like talking like you know who I'm talking about, sorry. But yeah, this was okay. This was my first Lisa Kleypas book, and I enjoyed it, but it was not my most favorite. And then I read Wild Rain by Beverly Jenkins, which was amazing. This was her new release in 2021. It's the second book in her Women Who Dare series, but I didn't read the first book. You totally don't have to read the first book, which I have now since read, to read this second book. They have nothing at all to do with each other. Like, I thought the first book was a family member in this second book. They're not even in the same state. But this takes place in Wyoming. This is a Western historical romance. Beverly Jenkins's, all of her books, I'm pretty sure all of her books are set in America, which I love. And what is so special about Beverly Jenkins is she includes so much rich, like true American history in her books, which I think is so amazing. It keeps me so engrossed and like really paying attention to the story to pick out these little historical details. And I guess I'm just more familiar with American history because it's where I live. But this book follows a female ranch owner, and she's just so completely content with her life. She breaks horses. She helps everyone in her community with their ranch stuff. And then our hero in this he's working as a reporter, but he's just working as a reporter for his dad. So his dad has like an East Coast newspaper, and he sends his son to interview our heroine's brother, who is a physician. And he's a physician of color in the American West after the Civil War. So they're just doing like different stories like that. So he's looking to interview her brother, but he comes in a snowstorm, he gets hurt, and our heroine finds him and is taking care of him. And then they have such a mature adult relationship. They're like, hey, we like each other, we want to be together, but without really any labels. We're just gonna be together, have a good time. And then there is plot. So that's their relationship. They're fine. They're having a good steamy time. And then there's plot. Someone gets shot, and there's some con artists going around in their town. And it's just such a great time. I love these books so much. I love the characters and the relationships that Beverly Jenkins writes. And then her plots are just so actiony. I love these books. And I can't wait to read more Beverly Jenkins this year. And I gave Wild Rain 5 stars. Easy 5 stars. And then I read A Holly Jolly Diwali by Sonia Lawley. I read this in the holiday vlog that I talked about, so I'll link it below. This book was okay. I gave it 3 stars. It was a romance, but it was more kind of like trying to be like self-discovery and things like that. So our main character, her family is Indian, but she has grown up in America and she works in the tech sector in Seattle. She loses her job, which she didn't feel that strongly about. So she has an older sister who's kind of the rebel in the family. So she has always tried to be like the steadfast, good daughter, the responsible one. So she didn't do music like she had an interest in, and she got a job in tech and like computer science. So she's just always played it safe, and she doesn't really feel very like fulfilled in her life, I suppose. But she loses her job, and that gives her a great opportunity to travel to India for her friend's wedding. And then she meets this bass player, and they strike up an attraction between each other. But it was just really quite insta-lovey. Like, she was calling him her everything very early into their relationship, like maybe a few days, and all they had done is like kiss each other. And I get that that was like kind of part of this was our main character learning to make decisions for herself and not make decisions based on other people. But this was just like a fun time. I really liked the setting and I really liked all the traveling we did, but the characters just weren't the most like fleshed out and my favorite. But this was like a fun holiday read. And then I read The Rogue of Fifth Avenue by Joanna Shoup, which is also in my historical romance readathon vlog. This is another American historical, which I think I'm learning are my favorites. This is set in New York, The Rogue of Fifth Avenue. And our heroine is this socialite daughter of this really powerful family, and then our hero is the lawyer for this family, and he has everyone believing that he comes from money, but he's actually from like the really impoverished side of New York, but he has worked his way to be this really successful lawyer. And our heroine is already like betrothed to someone else, but they just have such an attraction to each other. And this was another one that I just ate the underlying plot up so much. The relationship was really good, very steamy, great chemistry, great attraction to each other, but the plot was like our heroine, Mammy is her name, Marion. She goes by Mammy. But she does this, I'll call it charity work, but it's not for an actual charity because she didn't like how the established charities, like they made a lot of people, like the immigrants from different countries, all convert to Christianity to be able to utilize like charity resources, and she really didn't like that, so she's just doing her own vigilante philanthropy. So she basically steals people's money so she can hand it out how she sees fit and not like go through another charity. But one of the families that she's working with, the wife gets in trouble for murdering her abusive husband. So she makes our hero, who is a lawyer, take on the case. And that's the like underlying plot that brings them together. This was so much fun and such a good read. I cannot wait to read more Joanna Shoup. I gave this 5 stars. And then I'll quickly talk about Starry Night by Debbie McComber. I gave this book 1 star. I did not like this at all. It's in my holiday vlog. It was so insta-lovey. The plot of this is we have a female reporter. She wants to have more meaningful pieces. She wants to write bigger stories. She just writes these like little fluffy social pieces. And her boss is like, if you locate this author who no one has ever seen or interviewed before, you can have bigger pieces. And she's like, okay, I'll do it. And she just talks to everyone like she is so entitled to everything, and she easily locates this very reclusive author in Alaska in like a couple days. She's like, I found him, and she shows up, and then they get snowed in for like a day. And I'm sorry if this is offensive, and she is just like kind of a Karen. Her name's Carrie, but she's kind of a Karen. Like, she's just kind of telling everyone what to do, and she gets really weirdly jealous about things. And then our male love interest, he gets weirdly jealous about things. This book is just like 200 some pages, but I didn't like anything about it, and I was actively offended by our female heroine. She was just not my favorite person. She had a really annoying friend at her newspaper who was just like super nosy about everything in her life, and I was like, why are you girls friends? Like, you all are just really annoying to each other. Anyway, if you want more about this, I talked about it in my least favorite books of 2021, and I talked about it in my holiday vlog, so check those out if you want to know more. about Debbie Macomber. And then I read Forever Wild by K.A. Tucker, which is the 2.5 book in her Simple Wild series. This is not a spoiler, but this is basically Jonah and Calla getting married and planning their wedding. And this is a holiday novella. It's such a good time. Their families are coming together and meeting for the first time. You just have cameos of all your favorite characters. This was an amazing time. This is an Alaskan romance, and I gave this book 5 stars. And then I read Coming Home for Christmas. So this is what I did. I got on Libby and I just put holds on all of the like very traditional Christmas looking romance type books. So I randomly put a hold on the audio for this. And this book surprised me so much. The plot was so much more than I thought it was going to be. So the setup of this is there is this husband and his wife went missing 7 years ago, and everyone thinks he murdered her. They've got 2 kids together, and now they have a new district attorney who is like, I'm finally gonna close the case on you. We're putting you away for your wife's murder. And he has a friend who's in the FBI, and he has actually found her, and the husband just wasn't gonna bother her because he's like, well, she just like went away and started this new life. Like, I guess I'll just leave her alone. But now he can't leave her alone. He has to go get her. So the book starts and he shows up and he's like, hello, wife of many years who I haven't seen in 7. You have to come home with me because they're trying to put me away for your murder. So she goes home with him and they have to like show everyone, hey, she's alive. And then basically this book is them dealing with the aftermath of that, her dealing with a lot of personal issues. So big trigger warnings in this for things like postpartum depression and like physical disability. She's had a lot happen to her and she is coming to terms with that and like sharing that with her family, and then her family is like figuring out how to be supportive for her. This book was so good. Like, it's not super heavy on the romance. It is a second chance like marriage and trouble romance, which I don't read a lot of, so that was really fun. But this book was just so good, and the kids in it are really good characters also. And I just had a really good time, like a surprisingly good and invested time listening to this, and I gave this 5 stars. And then I read another Debbie Macomber. I read Dashing Through the Snow, which I have watched the Hallmark movie for. And the setup of this is that there's this girl, she's like in her early 20s, she's like maybe 24, and she's trying to surprise her mom by flying home for Christmas, but somehow she has ended up on the FBI no-fly list. She has the same name as someone else they're looking for, but she can't get a plane ticket. And she ends up having to share a car with this guy, and this is their romance while they are traveling together during Christmas in this rented car, and the FBI is chasing them. And this book was fine. I gave it 2.5 stars just because it still rings true. Debbie Macomber's characters are just so entitled. Like, she shows up at the airport and she's like, but ma'am, you have to sell me a ticket. I'm a graduate student and I'm trying to surprise my mom for Christmas. And all of her characters just have that embodiment of entitlement. Anyway, this was fun. The FBI was super incompetent though, and I just rolled my eyes a lot in this, and I just don't think Debbie Macomber books are for me. And then I read The 12 Dates of Christmas by Jenny Bayliss. This book was fun. The romance though was like a 1 star for me. Her dates were fun. So she signs up through this, like, it almost seems like a radio type event, but she signs up to go on these 12 blind dates, and those were fun to watch. They did Christmassy things. I enjoyed those. I enjoyed the setting. There's a lot of like baking and a lot of coffee shop stuff going on. But her romance is with this guy who she's been best friends with like her entire life, and then they kind of got together and then they had a falling out. And he is just so unlikable. Like, I don't know why we were supposed to like him at all. He didn't really do anything that made me like him as a love interest. Like, I liked some of her dates a lot more than I liked this Matt guy who she ends up with. So I gave this 3 stars because I enjoyed the holiday aspect of it, but the romance aspect was just not there at all. And then I read Neanderthal Marries Human by Penny Reed. This is book 1.5 in her Knitting in the City series. I gave this like 3.5 stars. This follows Janie and Quinn, and they are just not my favorite couple. Like, they both get on my nerves occasionally. So Janie is like, her personality quirk is that she's super focused on random facts. Like, she just knows so many random facts and she uses them as like a coping mechanism, basically. She has a really messed up family, which is actually pretty entertaining. And then Quinn is this like security guy. Like, he owns this super successful private security business. But I just feel like he makes her do things that she doesn't want to do. And he's not my favorite hero in a romance book. But this is them getting married. But this book was way too long to just be like a 1.5 book of people getting married. I'm pretty sure this was like 400 pages. And this is them planning a wedding. And Janie's like, well, since we're having such a quick engagement, I'm gonna make us have a really stressful wedding to test our relationship. And everything about that is just not me. Like, for my wedding, we just like eloped, like hired a company that did everything for us and took pretty pictures. That was it. So Janie like forcing them to stressfully plan this huge wedding when neither one of them wanted it was not for me. But then I really did like the ending of this book and just like seeing everything come together. And I am really excited to continue with this series, but the couple in these first 2 books in the series are just not my favorite people. And then because I liked Coming Home for Christmas so much, I picked up another Rayanne Thane book. This is Sleigh Bells Ring. I'm pretty sure this is her newest release. And this book was so good also. I'm giving this one like 4.5 stars. We are on a ranch in, I think we're in Wyoming. And our female main character she's the aunt to these kids who lost their mom. And her brother is their dad. And he's had a really hard time with it. And he has ended up in jail for like public drunkenness during the holidays. So she's caring for his 2 kids and they are so sweet. They're twins and they're like 6 years old and they are just so cute. But then you see them deal with, they lost their mom really traumatically the year before. So you see them like dealing with that and talking about how they miss her. And our hero in this book is the grandson of the owner of this ranch. So they have known each other their whole lives, but then they just kind of went off and did different things in their adulthood. And now they are back in the same place together and they have holiday feels and they are exercising those feels on each other. But there's also a secondary relationship in this and I really enjoyed it a lot. And that female character has had a lot of substance abuse issues. And I'm just so impressed by Rayanne Thane. Like, I would recommend these books to my mom. Like, they are pretty tame, but they just have so much substance to them. Like, the plots are just so good. The characters are just like so mature and like good at talking to each other, which is truly refreshing in books sometimes. But this book was so good and it's during the holidays and they're trying to make Christmas special for these kids and his whole family is coming back to this ranch after they have lost someone and it's like the first time they're all going to be together in a really long time. So they're like decorating and they're baking and they're doing sleigh rides. It was a really great Christmas read, but also it felt like it had more to it, you know, like it wasn't just a light fluffy holiday read, it had more to it and I just enjoyed this so much. And then the last book that I read in 2021 was Homecoming King by Penny Reed. I read this for the Sugar and Spice Book Club. Also, I read this because Penny Reed is just so amazing. Her characters are so funny. They are so quirky. Like, everyone has super big eccentricities about them and I eat it up. And this is a marriage of convenience. Given, okay, the marriage doesn't take place for a little bit in this book, but it is a true marriage of convenience. So our plot for this is our heroine works at this bar in Texas and she got conned. When she was like 18, she married this guy and he conned her out of a bunch of money, left her with a bunch of debt. So she's been working for like 10 years trying to pay off this debt. And she also likes to do crafty things. Like, she has an Etsy shop and she does like pottery and cool stuff like that. Well, our hero went to high school with our heroine, but now he is an NFL star. So he is back in his hometown and he runs into her at her bar and they have a really interesting meeting and he ends up having to stay with her. And then he's like, you know what? You would make a really good wife. And he has this thing going on where no one thinks he's going to get married and there's like a lot of like weird, uncomfortable media focus on him and he's just trying to get out from under that. And to do that, he thinks he should get married. So he propositions her to fake date and then fake marry him, and she does. because she has secretly had a crush on him her entire life. Okay, that's not why she fake marries him, but she has had a crush on him her entire life, like since elementary school. So she feels super creepy. I gave this book 4 stars. It was a really good time, but I really felt like our heroine was super naive about his developing feelings for her, and she just like absolutely couldn't believe that he would want to be with someone like her. And that got a little old, a little fast in here, because that does go on for a pretty long time. But still, this was such a fun, this was the holiday read also. Towards the end of this book, we have some Thanksgiving events, we have some Christmas events, we have baking, we have train sets, we have Christmas sweaters, we've got big sweater energy, which is a term that gets thrown around in here. But this was so good, and Penny Reed just writes the funniest characters, and I love her. So those were the 15 books that I read in December. Let me know what you read in December. Let me know what your plans are for the new year. You won't see this video until January, but give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one.